All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting for Monday, December 16th. Just one study session topic for tonight. We have Director of Community Development Brad Power and Planning Manager Brian Isom and Senior Planner John Vorborough here to present a progress report on Englewood Forward Comprehensive Plan, on the Englewood Forward Comprehensive Plan. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for having
Do you want the mic?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for having us. We're sorry we missed you last week. Hope everyone is feeling better. We thank you for squeezing us in tonight. That wasn't the expected PowerPoint. I don't.
John, we have the presentation on our side. So, well,
I think they found it. All right. So back in September, we came to City Council study session to talk about the idea of doing a comprehensive plan update. And you gave us great feedback about what you expected, what you wanted to see, concerns that you had. And so, but you gave us the green light to go ahead with that. And tonight we're here to kind of update you on the progress of what we've been doing as you had requested. So back in September, we had that study session. Immediately after that, we turned around and had a study session with Planning and Zoning Commission to brief them on the project as well and get them up to speed. And we began our preparations for our November 19th kickoff, open house kickoff. And so we put together kind of a schedule for the whole project, developed some different informational boards and opinions and points of fact about the project. And then we quickly started working with our communications team to get the word out about this project, develop web content, start to push out to various social media channels to get people up to speed about what was going on and get them ready for this November 19th, 2024 open house. In the meantime, we worked with the Planning and Zoning Commission. We had a study session on October 22nd, and we also had a follow-up study session right straight after the open house on the 19th. So this is what we've been communicating to the public via our communications team and as well as the open house. Our goals for this project are to incorporate supporting plans, studies, and projects that we have already accomplished. We wanted to bring our indicator data up to date. We wanted to revise and consolidate the maps and the policies from 13 neighborhoods down to 6 larger sectors. And then, of course, we will overlay on all those maps the different boundaries for our new neighborhoods that we have. I think there's approximately 40 or so. And then we want to incorporate direction for our recent state land use legislation and develop future work programs. And then we wanted to communicate what is not included in this update. This update does not revisit and make changes to the Unified Development Code. It does not rezone property. It does not change our themes, goals, and objectives. And it does not change our land use intensity categories for R1 and R2 zoned areas. And so at the open house, we developed 5 different stations with boards. At each station, we had a number of planning staff to be available so that we could talk with the different peoples that came by. Station 1 was the plan updated expectations that you just saw, plus some little bit of city planning 101 to get people up to speed on what city planning is. And then because the city of Englewood has a very rich planning history, we thought, let's talk about these different plans that we've had over time in the city. We featured the 1969 and 1979 plans in Station 2, the 2003 and 2017 plans in Station 4, or 3, and then Station 4 and 5 were more information about the different parts of the current plan and how we were going to hopefully revise those parts of those plans. Going back then with the Planning and Zoning Commission at the October 22nd study session, we went over the latest Global Trends Report. The Global Trends Report is done by Progressive Urban Management Associates, which is a consulting firm that specializes in downtowns and business districts here in Denver. And they've been doing this report over time for at least a dozen years, I believe. And one of their Global Trends Report was featured in our 2016-17 comprehensive plan. So we got a hold of their latest one, and we went over that with Planning and Zoning Commission. Some of the conclusions for downtown is the pandemic was a great accelerator of change. Demographics remain favorable, but you can't take them for granted. And real estate is in flux. Things are changing. Different spaces are being readapted for different things. Downtowns play a critical role in public gathering as central public gathering spaces. And I think that really resonated with our Planning and Zoning Commission. I think they want to keep exploring that further. And then pressing challenges will need to be handled have to be handled in collaborations with different entities. And downtowns will benefit from a new generation of leadership. And I think we're already seeing that in Englewood. There's been lots of change in the downtown business environment, the different types of businesses that are down there, and most of them, the new ones, are being headed up by a younger generation. Implications for downtowns, for downtown management, cleanliness and safety are still the key priorities. Activate storefronts and reinvent offices. And I think our Downtown Development Authority is really doing that here at City Center. We have some stuff over there with City Spark, and that's what you need to do you just really don't want empty windows and walking by empty storefronts. That's really uninviting. And then create inviting civic spaces and program them differently. And the Downtown Development Authority is doing that too. They're working right now on plans for the West Old Hampton Avenue area where the little Dry Creek Plaza fountain is, and they're wanting to activate that as a kind of a festival space. And then at the November 19th study session, we went and focused in on all of our indicator data. And I believe there's 44 different indicators divided up amongst the plan themes: live, work, shop, move, learn, and play. For the most part, most of the trends, most of the indicators are showing positive trends. However, there are some areas that you probably are aware of that are a little bit of concerns for the community, such as home values. They're rapidly increasing, and that means there's a decreasing affordability. And then another area is the jobs housing balance. And so our housing stock has increased over time, but our employment levels have stayed pretty flat. This is most likely because we have some growth in certain areas, such as the hospitals. That's where our major growth takes place in employment. But we've also seen some job losses in the retail sector, and that's a lot of that has to do with the changing retail sector. More and more retail is being dominated by the delivery services. And we've had certain closings of some of the bigger boxes here in Englewood, and so there's some job losses there. And finally, the other concern is that we've also been seeing some difficulties with declines in transit and bicycling and walking as well. Before I go into and ask for questions, I just want to kind of give you an update of where we're going here from in the future here. So we have a study session and open house date scheduled for January 22nd. That's going to be a Wednesday. That's kind of Martin Luther King week, so everything's kind of moved back a day. And at that meeting, we're planning to bring draft maps, neighborhood maps, to the public and to start discussing them with Planning and Zoning Commission. And then another key date for City Council is we've been able to reschedule our planning law, state planning laws, legislation discussion with you for February 10th. And so that will be a critical time to touch base with you to see where you're at with those laws. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can.
John, thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions from members of council? Member Noonekamp?
Thank you so much, excuse me, for the update. It's helpful to hear where we are in the process. This is a bit of a comment and a question. I received some feedback from some citizens who are asking questions. What's the difference between our comp plan, our strategic plan? How do they work together? How have you been addressing those kinds of questions with the public, and have you been getting those as well?
Well, I have to say that we had a fairly light attendance at our first open house, and those questions I can't say that have come up, but we will be we are right now working with our planning staff to go through all of our plans that we've identified that have happened since 2017, and we're writing descriptions of those plans and combing them for specific content that makes sense, that mesh together. And so we're going to try to pull from all those plans to consolidate them in our comprehensive plan.
I think that's very helpful, and I think as you continue to do citizen engagement, it would be helpful to put into context for citizens who don't read comp plans every day. What is its purpose within our community? What makes it different from the way that we are governed by our code, by our charter, and then of course the way that we operationalize all of that through the strategic plan? I think that would be helpful as people are giving feedback to kind of understand how we use it within the city. But no other questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Russell?
Thank you, and I thank you for the update. You know, the whole movement, live, work, shop, play, that's probably almost a decade old here. And it really came here from the global community, so it's been around a lot longer. And so when do we start looking at perhaps revamping that? And then my other question is, it does kind of seem like the shop piece of this has been neglected from the very beginning. We just keep working on more density and more density, but there is no place for people to shop in Englewood. And that's one thing I would like to see addressed in this, because I don't want to add a boatload more density with no place for people to shop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Prang?
Thank you. Thank you for the update tonight. I have a few questions about some of the data in our presentation tonight. So specific to rent cost in Englewood. And I'm just curious where this data comes from and how recent, and I'm questioning how accurate it is, because
We get our data for that from CoStar. We have a subscription to CoStar. And if you go on the CoStar website, you can see data points from all the way back for probably 15 years for different various one-bedroom, two-bedroom apartments.
what is CoStar?
It's like a national economic business kind of software that it's kind of the premier software in terms of markets, retail, industrial, and housing market research.
Okay. Do we have any more local sources for data? The reason I'm asking these questions is because I look at some of what's quoted here for rental prices, and it's just simply not accurate. I have a 20-year-old in my home that's trying to get out and get independent and find an apartment, hoping to be in Englewood, and there is nothing anywhere near $1,400 available in Englewood. So I'm just curious about accuracy and
Well,
us putting this out.
thank you for letting me know that you think it's too low.
Yes.
There is a challenge as well in the fact that the vacancies are very low, so there's not a lot of available apartments. And so when somebody is looking for an apartment, they're probably going to see a slice of rent that's going to be just a bit higher because it's a new empty space that they're trying to get as much money as they can. It's more up to date, whereas someone who's been renting for a couple years might be at a lower price point because they've just been renting for a while and this rent's stayed a little more steady.
Okay. I also, I would like to see in our final version of this update to the plan, really strong statements around that, the piece from the Global Trends report that talks about downtowns really being utilized to address current societal polarization, if you will. And I think, just having really strong statements as a city around equity and not just addressing any particular age group that may or may not be trending within the city, but that how we're revitalizing and using our downtown area really speaks to attracting all ages, all abilities, et cetera, et cetera. I think that was a really interesting point that was pulled out in the report, and I think that we could build on that toward the positive. And let me see if I had one other question. I also think in the indicator data where we're looking at how many single-family units have been added or not, how many multifamily units, et cetera. If we could have data that shows kind of the overall housing stock within Englewood and what percentage of our overall housing stock each one of those areas is, I think that would help council members be able to speak to constituents about concerns that they might have around how we're developing within the city. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Wright.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate the questions that Member Prang has. It's a lot of what I was thinking. My first question, can you again give the dates? I had January 22nd. I'm a little slow on writing right now, so I wasn't able to get all the information down.
Yes, January 22nd will be our second open house evening from 5 to 7.
And where is that out?
Here at the community room.
And on the 10th, that will be with P&Z or presenting to council?
We've been scheduled to do the 2 remaining state land use law that we hadn't gotten to.
Okay.
Actually 3, there's 3 of them.
Yes.
And we've been notified that we will be on with you for that on February 10th.
Perfect. Okay. My other question to piggyback off Member Prank on the rent amounts is, has anyone thought about just calling around to apartment complexes or looking for anything for rent online through Zillow or other, apartment rents or whatever, and looking at those prices? We've helped people try and find a place. and just calling and looking. I mean, 2-bedroom apartments go in upwards of $4,000 in some areas right now in Englewood. And that's just calling, and that's for people established in the city. Rents are going up even for people that have been established. So it applies to everybody right now because I know that they're building a lot right now. So I don't think the market is allowing for it, is a lot of it. So I think CoStar is incorrect. So I don't know.
Okay, well, I think that, thank you for that, and I think that's something for me to think about as maybe giving some local anecdotal, from doing some research on my own, looking at what's available on local websites to see what they might be charging, and maybe even, I could probably even list the different properties and how much what we're finding. That might be
be a
good
good idea.
anecdotal information to supplement with.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much.
And Mayor, if I could add to that.
Sure, go ahead, City Manager.
Having worked with CoStar in other cities, it's really it is a national standard, and they do work closely with the real estate community, and they have kind of a database of averages. But certainly, I don't know that we would have the staffing to be able to do our own kind of market analysis of, rental rates, but perhaps looking, locally at some of the realtor data that we do have. One of the things that, kind of throws people off is the fact that many of our apartments are, over 30 years old. Those are going for significantly less than what most people are looking for, right? So we have a lot of apartments. I have a friend who's, paying $700 a month for a 1-bedroom in the Wellness District. But you have anything that's been built in the last 20 years is going to be far higher, especially in the last 10 years, which is what a lot of people are looking for.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. Any other questions for members of council? John, thank you very much for the update tonight. Brian, thank you again for coming as well. Happy holidays, and we'll be speaking to you guys in the new year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we have a couple minutes before we get started, so if you want to take a quick break, we'll start right at 7 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
bad enough with two hands, one.
No, I get it. All right, everyone, we are now back. I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Present?
Member Newnham,
Present.
Member Pring,
Present?
Member Russell,
Present.
Member Ward,
Present.
Member Wright,
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
All seven present.
Thank you so much. Moving on to agenda 5A. This is minutes from the regular city council meeting from December 2nd. Any changes to the minutes from December 2nd?
Please. Okay,
Yes, Member Wright, go ahead.
I had a question, please. On here, it states that we took a break after the golf vote. And actually, we took a vote after we voted after the judges'
The salary discussion.
salary, yes. And then my other question is, it says, motion to table Council Bill 62 on to December 9th special meeting, motion carried. It doesn't say who voted how. And I'm curious about that also.
Are you saying the vote's missing from the table?
Yes.
Okay, we can go back and look at that.
And then you also want to add references to the breaks, correct? Member Wright?
Correct. I think it's because the consent agenda, I believe the golf action plan was part of the consent agenda. And then we discussed the judges' pay, and then we took the break.
Okay.
So I think the order's a little bit backwards.
Okay. We could just do a friendly amendment to make those changes. Are you okay with that, Member Wright?
I am.
As City Clerk, you can make those changes. Perfect. All right, can I get a motion to approve 5A as based on the friendly amendment raised by Member Wright?
I move to approve with amendments.
Thank you very much, Member Russell. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Prang. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson,
Aye.
Member Newnham,
Aye.
Member Pring,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ward,
Aye.
Member Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to the minutes from the special city council meeting from December 9th. Any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve?
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Member Wright.
The Pledge of the Allegiance was not said. I was not present, but I watched the meeting afterwards, and I do not recall seeing the pledge said.
Yes, that's correct. We didn't say the pledge because we treated it as a study session. So we didn't say the pledge, so that should be removed.
Okay. Perfect. Can we make that change, City
Yeah,
Clerk?
I'm sorry, I thought that was taken off, so that's an oversight on our part.
All right. Thank you, City Clerk. All right, we'll just make that change as well.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, go
And
ahead, Member Russell.
This may just be a policy question. When we've not had a quorum in the past, have we gone ahead and discussed study session? I mean, didn't we have back on October 28th, that meeting got canceled too. Was that for a lack of a quorum?
That was, I think we only had 3 possibly, or it was canceled just because we didn't have quorum. And that may have been a special meeting as well. Go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, is it a policy that and we may not have discussed it, whether we should do that or not?
I don't know if we have a written policy on that, but I do recall times that when we've shown up for a meeting and not had quorum, we have at times continued with study session items. But I think we generally cancel it if we know we don't have quorum ahead of time.
Right.
Okay, I appreciate that, and that may be something that we need to talk about some other time.
Sounds good, Member
Thank
Russell. All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as amended by Member Wright?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Newnham. Can I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you so much. Moving on to agenda item 6A. This is recognition for the 2024 Fall Citizens Police Academy graduates who are in attendance tonight. Englewood City Council and the Englewood Police Department would like to recognize the individuals who completed the Fall 2024 Citizens Police Academy, a dynamic and interactive 11-week course that provides residents with insights and knowledge into the police department. The Englewood Police Department believes in providing an open forum for residents to gain insight and knowledge of the workings of the police department. The individuals being recognized tonight spent numerous classroom hours over the past 11 weeks learning every facet of policing. They attended courses in crime scene investigation, accident, case reviews, use of force, self-defense, SWAT, and much more. The graduates of the Citizens Academy volunteered their time to attend these courses, and from this point on will be part of the Academy alumni. Academy alumni are often called upon to provide assistance with city events, and in the future, will have the opportunity to volunteer their time at the police department. We would like to recognize these individuals for their time and dedication to the community, as well as their willingness to learn about the various day-to-day operations of the police department. Congratulations to each of you and welcome to the Englewood Police Department alumni team. Sergeant Zisner, did you want to come up and just say a few words about the academy itself? Yep, up to the front. There should be like a button with a star on it that will light up that microphone.
Is this
Yep,
working?
you're all good.
All right, I would just like to recognize these folks for coming in. This is a great community event and community outreach program that we have that allows citizens of the city of Englewood to come and see what the police department does. It's an extensive 11-week course that we invite them to come in. We talk about current events. We talk about crime scene investigation, accident reconstruction, pretty much every facet of the police department. And it's just a great community outreach program that we have that allows them to come in, and we're doing one again next year, and see what the police department's about and kind of share what we do with them.
Yeah, and I appreciate the police department providing this open access and allowing our citizens to learn more about our police department. So thank you so much for that. We're going to read off the names, and I'll hand you a certificate as well. So if you wouldn't mind just coming up, we'll line you up, and then we'll take a group picture at the very end as well. So, City Clerk, will you be reading off the names? All right, perfect.
Okay, so we've got Shauna Baines. Tanya Faust. Vanessa Fritchie. We also have Ella Fritchie, but she's not here tonight. Miguel Garza Wicker. Dmitry Wychentsev. And Alina Rychensa.
All right, everyone, there's no agenda item 7, so we're moving on to recognition of public comment. This is an opportunity to address City Council. There's an expectation that the presentation would be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue, and please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. I see that everybody did provide their addresses or cross streets or stated whether or not they lived in Denver. Non-Englewood residents must provide the name of the city. If you have addressed council in the last 90 days, you will be moved to the bottom of the list. Written materials may be submitted to the city clerk in advance or at the meeting, and audiovisual materials must be submitted to the city clerk by 5 p.m. on the Thursday prior to the meeting. We have 5 speakers here tonight. Up first is going to be Mary Kalichi from Englewood to speak about the judge. And the response tonight will be Member Noonenkamp coming back to you from previous time, so.
Hi.
Good evening, Mary. Yeah, go ahead and begin speaking when you're ready.
Yes, so I'm Mary Kalechi. I'm here to speak to the council. Thank you so much for all you do. I'm thankful for your time. I am here to talk because I watched about Joe Jefferson because I was told about that. I am highly disappointed. I am so disappointed. We don't need any more study sessions. I'm almost getting hit at a sidewalk where I don't have enough room because I have to pull to where the push button is so I don't get hit. So we spend money to do these things. We spend money to do like Jason, and I went and I looked at that and that looks really kind of crazy. But me having to pull behind the pole so that I don't get hit because semis are making that turn too hard, that's ridiculous. And we want to do another study session to pay the judge what he's worth. The people have elected him and he's unopposed. Please listen to your people. I would appreciate that so much. I have pictures of where cars are going through that corner and the semis tire marks are being made, if you guys would like to see that. But also when I cross from the Harbor Freight side of Hampton and the Harbor Freight side of Hampton and Galapago, nobody pays attention. I've almost been hit once a week, I would have to say. And that's not an overstatement, that's an understatement. It's a crazy world out there. And the priorities is, I'm blown away. I've been tired of watching and doing all this, but I was thinking I needed to go speak on the housing and how people, if they're going to do HUD, how they might need to get a certification or something. That cost is only going to be passed down to the citizens paying in their taxes and to that person. So I highly suggest that when these things come to council, that if you could keep us in mind, because I'm middle class, but my pension's not making it, I can't pay my bills. I went and I got a loan to buy a place, and I was approved. And I don't make enough income for that to be logical. So I implore you guys, please keep me in mind when you're making decisions. Thank you for your time.
Mary, thank you very much for coming and speaking tonight. Any questions for members of council? Seeing none, Mary, thanks again for coming tonight. Up next is Chris Tenorio, here to speak about cell phones in schools. Good evening, Chris. When you're ready to speak, you may begin.
Good evening to everybody at City Council. I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of the incident that happened today in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm speaking because the fact of the matter is, cell phones are a very good life-saving tool. And the other thing I'd like to really speak on is the safety aspect of having that in a crisis situation such as that, a hazmat situation or anything like that, so the kids can stay in touch with their parents. And I don't want to see the schools confiscating those phones in a crisis situation. So, and that's why I would like to maybe see an ordinance pertaining to cell phones in schools. Because I think, in my opinion, I think the city ordinance in that topic could save a lot of lives. And I yield back.
Thank you so much, Chris, for coming and speaking tonight. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Member Ward.
I just want to make sure you understand that as the elected public body in the city, we don't have jurisdiction over the separate government institution that is the Englewood School District, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to ask, Chris, have you attended a school board meeting to bring this? Well, it just happened today, so are you planning on going to a school board meeting?
I'm actually planning on going to maybe one here in Englewood and one in Denver.
Okay.
Because so that way I can address that and say, okay, here's where the issue is, and this is why the kids need to have cell phones on them at all times.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris. With no further questions, thanks for coming and speaking tonight. Up next is Kevin Wright of Englewood, with no topic given. Good evening, Kevin. When you're ready to begin, you may begin speaking.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Kevin Wright. I'm here tonight to express my strong opposition to the proposed ranked choice voting in our city. This idea was already rejected by Colorado voters on the state ballot, and there's a good reason for that. It complicates our elections, erodes trust, and undermines the clarity of our democratic process. Ranked choice voting is often presented as a way to improve fairness, but in reality it creates confusion, increases the chance of errors, risks disenfranchising voters who don't fully understand the system. We should not replace our straightforward one person, one vote method with a convoluted system that introduces unnecessary hurdles. I am also concerned about the motivations behind this proposal. Chelsea Newnenkamp, a leading advocate for RCV in Englewood, has contributed to pro-RCV literature. She is associated with Unite America, a group with clear political goals. The executive director of Unite America, Nick Toriano, even wrote a book called The Primary Solution, which promotes ranked choice voting. This is not just about improving elections, it's about pushing a political agenda. And our community has more priorities. I presented each and every one of you with Chelsea's Facebook communications that I found on social media. She discusses how she worked with Nick for 4 years to make this book, and how happy she is. Each one of you has a copy. I wanted to get that on record. Next year, I'll be addressing this council about the misspending of ARPA funds. Federal money meant to help our city recover and thrive. I want to know where the PP is. Where's the HEPA filters? Where is the money? I plan to bring PP examples for you to see. How can we justify the cost of implementing RCV when we have critical issues to resolve and taxpayers are still waiting for those funds to be used effectively? Let's respect the will of the voters, focus on the real community needs, and keep our elections simple, fair, and transparent. Please vote against adopting ranked choice voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, for your time tonight. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. Just to clarify, for those that don't know, how are we related?
We're married.
Okay, and did I have any part in what you wrote and read this evening?
No, Kim, you don't touch
Okay.
that stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Kevin, thanks for your time tonight.
Merry Christmas, you guys.
Merry Christmas. Up next is Gary Kozak from Englewood to speak in general. Hello, Gary. Good evening. When you're ready, you may begin.
Good evening, City Council. I appreciate all of your efforts and stuff. I must have done some research similar to what he just said. Chelsea, by law, because you are associated with an organization of stopped ranked voting, that you will have to go ahead and step aside and not vote on that because you stand to gain something by it. Now, if we find out that you've been getting paid and stuff in this other organization or compensated in the other organization, there's a problem with that as well. That you should have to abstain yourself from any votes towards this. The public voted to turn around and vote a mayor in office, separate. And now you want to come in with this little game so that, Joe, I know you really want to be the mayor, stand up and go ahead and lobby for it. Go ahead and put yourself out there in the public that you don't need to change some laws just so that you'd have a better chance to get in there. As far as the judge, I've approached you guys several times of it, and you give me the runaround, and then all of a sudden you sneak it in and you're going to cheat a judge again. The judge was voted in. If you don't like the judge, go ahead and help mediate it, but not try to force him out. You're not going to hurt him by money. The man's wealthy. But you're creating a scene across the board of people that do appear in front of his court. Here again, you're not listening to us. As far as the school, Englewood Public Schools has one officer, a security person. She was not even a police officer. Okay, they've changed because she left after the school incident where they had a call. Some of the students got locked in the building when it was a gas leak. If you got a gas leak in the building, you sure as heck don't want to be locked in the building. And yes, it is part of the school system, but you guys as a city have to work together with the police department on how you're going to go ahead and monitor it. Hinckley High School has its own police department, and they still monitor and work with the locals. I hope you vote against this ranked choice, and we'll be watching how you vote. Thank you very much.
Gary, thanks for your time tonight. Any questions from council? Seeing none, thanks for your time tonight. That completes the folks in attendance. Do we have anyone virtual tonight? City Clerk Carlisle.
Yes, we do. I thought there was one more on there's a second page.
Oh, there's a second. Sorry about that.
And then we can go to the online.
Sorry about that. Rebecca Kramer, here to speak about salaries and produce.
Good evening. Nice to see you all here. Glad everyone's healthy. Hope you're ready for the holidays. I'm here because I watched the meeting from December 2nd as well. And I just have to say, I was frustrated and embarrassed as a taxpayer and a citizen of the city of Englewood when it came to the dressing down of Judge Jefferson in front of the camera and everyone to see. I think the treatment of him over the last couple of years has been disgraceful. He's an elected official, and he should be paid a commensurate salary with others of comparable cities in the Denver area. I know there was some additional information that was requested. I think that's being done just to kick the can down the road and to keep putting him off. I've managed many teams. I've done all kinds of merit increases, bonuses, comparative salaries over dozens of years. And I think that was brought up about private companies, but I did it for a publicly traded company. And just because he's an elected official doesn't mean that he should be screwed out of a reasonable salary. And I do think there's some subversive issues going on because I believe there are individuals that do not want that to be an elected position. They want it to be an appointed position so that they can have more pressure that they can assert on him as a municipal judge in this city. So I did pull some extra information because, Joe, you wanted some information. So I went to the Englewood website, and publicly on the Englewood website, and these may not be up to date with the increases that occurred this last year, but because the website said that Joe made $169,000 a year. And I understand him from that meeting to be making $178,000 a year. Tamara Niles, our city attorney, the website states she makes $282,000 a year. Sean Lewis makes $236,000 a year. The deputy city manager makes $199,000 a year. The city clerk makes $155,000 a year. The director of community development makes $180,000 a year. And that was just a little bit of searching I did with the drop-down options that were available through the financial portal on the City of Englewood's website. So there's some comparative numbers that you can take some consideration with Joe's salary as opposed to some of the other professional salaries in the city. So I would really just like to see us get past the pettiness. I don't think there's more study sessions that are needed. I think the information that was given, I printed it out, I have it with me on the other salaries. I think reasonably we should bring him up to what the others are making. There was one other thing that you're gonna vote on tonight that I wanted to mention. I'm gonna run out of time, but I don't believe that we should get into the personal production of mushrooms.
Rebecca, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time tonight. And now we do have a speaker online. City Clerk Cloud. And is it Regan Benson from Denver?
That's correct.
All right.
Are you there, Ms. Benson?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So where is my video option?
Let me see if it'll let me promote you to panelist. Okay, try that. There you go.
We can see you.
And I don't see a timer here.
We won't have a timer online.
All right.
Excuse me?
Can you just speak up a little bit? It's not.
Ms. Benson, when you're ready to begin, you can go ahead and speak.
I don't see a timer here.
There won't be a timer online, but we'll start a clock once you begin speaking.
Oh, so I don't know how much time I have. And what do you need from me to be able to speak this evening?
No, that is it. Go ahead, Ms. Benson.
I'm actually not from Denver. I'm from the city of Rough and Ready. So I don't know what your commentary was, Mayor, about being from Denver. So do you need additional requisites from me to be able to speak? And has the timer started?
Yes, it has. Go ahead, Ms. Benson.
Oh, it has. Okay, I see. Oh, well, okay, so let's just put a couple things on the record here. Since I'm not allowed to be there in person, but I'll be back, don't worry. Your police department continues to not address complaints. I see that we have Sergeant Disner in the house this evening. I wonder if Sergeant Disner let those 6 participants know that they do not investigate any complaints in that police department, and he is in charge of that. And in fact, Sergeant Disner is now on the record threatening to sue people for filing complaints and publishing videos. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And again, the Englewood Police Department continues to not address complaints. How much time do I have left? I don't see a timer.
2:10, 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
Oh, okay, okay. And so let me also put on the record that the standards of behavior states that people can't ride their bicycles in the Civic Center. So because Joe Anderson is allowed to store his e-bike in the Civic Center because he doesn't ride it, I just want to encourage everyone else that has a bicycle, you can bring your bicycles inside the building to be stored, just like Joe Anderson gets storage. Oh, also, I think you should implement a dress code for all city council members so they show respect to the public. Steve Ward, you look ridiculous. How much time do I have left?
1:15.
Well, I got a whole minute and 15 seconds left. Well, actually, I'm sorry I didn't prepare this talk because I've been at the jail all day fighting for an inmate that the Englewood Police Department ensured would become an inmate in that jail, with the testimony of an Austin Morrison up on the stand who lied during a trial. And now this particular inmate doesn't get to contact his attorney at the Arapahoe County Jail. I mean, can you believe how some of this stuff works? This is unreal. Oh, also, you still continue to have your city attorney and city manager working in cahoots to violate people's rights on the regular. And your city attorney continues to involve herself now in criminal cases. How much time do I have left?
25 seconds.
25 seconds. And I want to encourage everyone tonight who's smart to stop the Tri-City homeless scam with money. Oh, and by the way, did you know you guys spent $9,000 on a hearing officer to not allow me to come there? Because apparently I don't meet your highness's requirements to speak at city council. You spent $9,000.
Ms. Benson, your 3 minutes are up. Any questions for Ms. Benson? See none. Thanks for your time tonight. All right, and anyone else online? City Clerk Carlisle?
No.
All right, that concludes public comment for tonight. Member Noonan-Camp, when you are ready, you may give a response.
I am. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I am going to address a couple individuals, and then there were a couple of themes that came up across several members of the community that I will also address. So one, Mr. Denario, thank you so much. I think you actually are gone, but hopefully you take that up with the school board who has jurisdiction over in-school policies. Ms. Kalechi, thank you for being here. It's good to see you. Thank you especially for sharing about your experience being a pedestrian in the city center. It's helpful for us to know what your experience is like. We actually are increasing our funding in the 2025 budget for pedestrian safety initiatives. So you letting us know your experience helps us ensure that we can serve you well and take that seriously. So we are keeping you in mind in those decisions, and I'm grateful for you being here tonight. A couple people brought up the judge's salary discussion that happened on December 2nd. I unfortunately was not able to be at that meeting because I was ill, so I apologize that I don't have firsthand context to communicate tonight. But what I will share, especially Ms. Kramer, you shared some of the salary information. So in the last couple of years, the city actually did a class and compensation study where we actually looked at relevant careers and positions and title levels in other cities to ensure that everyone was being compensated at a fair value. So while you might see across different roles within the city different compensations, they're similar to other municipalities. We want the same thing for the judge as well. I think that's fair. The other things that we take into account is not just the title, but things like caseload, the amount of work that they're doing, the amount of hours that they're putting in to ensure that we have that equity and that fairness. And that's the way that we want to continue working forward. The other thing I'll name is, while I'm a staunch believer that the court should be able to operate, and it should operate independently, when we think about in our system of government checks and balances, the balance and the check that the city council not only has an obligation to the court, but to the taxpayers, is to manage the budget and to set those salaries. And that's what the charter has given us, that authority. And so we want to make sure we're being judicious and good stewards of those taxpayer dollars. And so that's why sometimes there are some additional questions or conversation, but I would also like to see this dealt with expeditiously. So thank you so much for your feedback. And then the last thing I will address, or this is kismet that I am giving council response tonight because there were some questions about me and what do I do for a living. For those who are not aware, I work at an organization called Unite America. We support nonpartisan election reform to make our systems of government more functional and representative. I've been there for 5 years. We do not engage in any campaigns or work at the local level or the municipal level. So if whatever Englewood does or does not do, or any other municipality in Colorado, I don't benefit from that whatsoever. My organization does not benefit from that. These are questions that I worked through with our city attorney and with our ethics policy when we were starting to discuss ranked choice voting. But it is a policy that I support. Most of my work is around primary reform. I'm lucky enough to be doing something in my day job that I'm very passionate about, and there's no prohibition from us supporting policies both in our day jobs and here on council, as long as we don't stand to gain anything from it. If anyone has any questions about what I do, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm very passionate about it. I believe in it. Or if you want to know more information, the social media posts that Mr. Wright mentioned tonight are all on my Twitter account, which is completely public, and I stand by everything that I've ever said. So if you have questions, please feel free to look into that. I think that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Member Noonan-Camp, thank you so much. Anything else from council? All right, we'll just move straight into consent agenda items. I have 3 items, and let me make sure I have the 3, but 3 items that are getting pulled are 9A3, 9B2, and 9C1. I think I have those correct. Let me just verify again. 9A3, 9B2, yep, those are it. Any other consent agenda items? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A1 and 2, 9B1 and 3, and 9C2, 3, 4, 5, and 6?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. 9A3, Member Russell, you have a question for Senior Deputy City Clerk Jackie McKinnon.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for being here. And so my questions are, and you probably already have these, can we have different laws in the city than those dictated by the state legislature?
And I talked to our deputy city clerk or deputy city attorney this morning, Sergio, and that was a no. His answer was no to that question. But then the second one might help a little bit with the next question.
Okay, can our restrictions be different from than those required by the state?
And it's no unless liquor code states it. So if the code or the state law states it shall, we can't change the law or change anything within the city perimeters. But if it states may, we have the ability to locally amend the general parameters set by the state law.
Okay, so then my question is, are any of the things that we're changing in the state law things that we do not have to do, that they could be different?
The public hearing, that way I believe that was a may, so we would not have to change not having a public hearing for liquor. The hours were also, I believe, a may. We can limit because right now they're asking for a 10 to 9, but we can go between those perimeters. We couldn't go outside of it. We couldn't go till 10 o'clock or, at 9 a.m.
Okay, and so the public hearing, does that impact where a person that wants a liquor license can locate, where they are locating?
We still have to follow all the guidelines. We still have to do zoning, tax licensing. They still follow everything. We wouldn't have to have a public hearing. And I think we would just look at each application individually and decide if we need to do that. Because right now, we don't do public hearings for transfers of licenses.
Anyway.
As right now, we don't.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of it came from, since I've been here, we have not had any opposition to any liquor licenses. And it's usually the hearing officer and the applicant that shows up for the hearings.
Okay. I mean, and before, did this whole system change under you, or did it change before you came? We used to have a liquor licensing board rather than...
That changed while I was here. So we went from a board to a hearing officer. And the hearing officer, she hears our new applicants, or if we have opposition, or if I get a transfer application, if I have questions, I do reach out to her.
Okay.
She's more of a consultant right now, but she does, again, our public hearings, she doesn't really ask anything else that's not on the application. And again, I haven't had any opposition come to any of our public hearings.
Okay, and I see you said that we can change our hours, but they can't be longer than the hours set by the state, correct?
Yeah, because state said, I believe the new ones are 10 to 9, so we couldn't do it 9 a.m., we couldn't go till midnight. And I think, nothing changed about, you can only have 4 hours a day, or 5, I believe, no, it's 5 hours a day and 4 days a week. And right now we have 2 applicants, Kent Liquors and Liquor Depot, who holds a tasting license. And again, it's nothing changed with the ounces that people can have. It's not like somebody can just go in there and it's not like going to a restaurant or a bar. All those stipulations still stayed within the law. It's just the hours changed.
Okay. And one of my biggest concerns is I don't want to give away all of our home rule authority. And so that's part of the reason I asked these questions.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, do you believe any of these changes are going to impact us that much? Are we necessarily changing the hours that we already had?
We don't, because looking at the application, I believe Kent Liquors does it, they could go for almost 7 hours a day. They do an average of 3 when they turn in their application to me. And I believe Liquor Depot does 4 hours. And they ask for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. they don't do them every weekend. And it's really just for a vendor to come in and showcase a new liquor, or, I mean, they're not in the business to give away liquor. So I don't see, and we haven't had any calls from PD. We haven't had any violations from either applicant. So I don't see an issue with the hours being changed.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A3?
Move to approve 9A3.
Thank you, Member Praying. Could I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright. Did you say aye?
Member Wright?
Oh, aye.
Okay. Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Think you heard someone else's name, didn't you?
I thought she said pray.
Moving on to 9B2, we have a question from Member Russell for Director of Finance Kevin Ingalls regarding the GO bond mill levy. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Member Russell, with your question.
Thank you, and I did get the answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyway for the public. My question is, are we late? The agenda says this was due yesterday, and actually, we're not even passing it till close of regular business hours, so.
Thank you. Kevin Ingalls, Director of Finance. No, since we passed this on December 2nd on first reading, that's sufficient for the county for us to be able to move forward in that process.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9B2?
I move to approve 9B2.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Aye.
Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. 9C1, we have City Attorney Tamara Niles. Member Russell, you have a question regarding the appointment or appointing city hearing officers.
Yes, thank you. So, do any of these situations involve violating people's due process rights? And I was thinking especially of Title 15, Chapter 3 and Title 1, Chapter 8. Title 15.3 is appointing hearing officers to hear nuisance abatements. And I did ask that for a specific reason, because in the past I've had people who have complained that they were being falsely charged, but there was no way to appeal.
Yes, this would give them a right to appeal to an independent hearing officer, and that people can raise due process concerns during that hearing. That could be sufficient potentially to overrule a staff finding regarding a nuisance, or to restart the process with sufficient due process. To my knowledge, no one has ever raised such an issue and successfully proved it during an independent hearing, but it doesn't mean that they can't or they won't at some future date.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then the other one was for Title 1, Chapter 8, which is Fair Campaign Practices Act complaints. And I'm thinking really about this one originally these complaints went to the state. And then the state wanted us to bring it back to the city. So when it involves city staff that would be the offenders, isn't that a conflict of interest?
So yes, this would involve any complaint that the city also violated Fair Campaign Practices Act, but that's why these are independent hearing officers. So these are attorneys, or they act in judicial capacities for some cities that don't work at the city, they don't work for us, and we maintain a separation. So for example, generally my office would represent the city in such a violation, so we don't direct the independent hearing officer. We don't retain them. We don't schedule them to appear. We maintain that level of separation. Instead, generally, it depends on what the code is. Sometimes the city manager's office by code retains the hearing officer. Sometimes the city clerk's office does, but it's never generally my office because we are there in a representative capacity. Generally, it wouldn't be a department that serves as a witness. So for example, if somebody claimed another department violated Fair Campaign Practices Act, then they wouldn't be involved in the scheduling of the hearing or providing any direction or serving as an intermediary of the independent hearing officer. So we do hire them to serve as a judge, exercise their discretion, and if that means ruling against the city, that's what we've hired them to do, to be fair and impartial.
So but is it your department that hires the independent hearing officers?
No, we never do that. The only role I have is I drafted the ordinance today, the resolution today, listing all the people that are willing to serve as independent hearing officers. Generally, though, the only other interaction that I or anyone from my office would have is as a party or as an attorney representing one of the parties, which would be the city.
Okay, and then I just have one more specific question in relation to the Fair Campaign Practices Act. So because I heard some complaints about the probably city staff, whoever that was, that approved the signs wanting to go after city staff. I know that nobody has. What would they have done? I mean, would they come to the clerk's office, or what would they do if they wanted to file a complaint?
Yes, I believe FCPA complaints are filed with the city clerk's office. Then the city clerk's office generally would obtain an independent hearing officer from the list of those appointed by city council tonight. And then the hearing officer would take it from there. Would review the complaint, would schedule any hearings, would schedule any preliminary hearings, issue an order. Generally, city staff doesn't have any other role in it.
Okay, and so I know there was a complaint several years ago against a council member, and it at that time it went to the state. Was the state elections office hearing those complaints, or was an independent hearing officer hearing those cases too then?
If I could defer this to Councilmember Ward, who used to work at the Secretary of State's office, I think he may know the answer. I personally don't.
I believe that complaint went to the Independent Ethics Commission because it involved the expenditure of public funds for personal benefit.
Okay, so is that a committee that the state had, or?
It's the Independent Ethics Commission is an independent body that is a state body that investigates allegations of misappropriation of public funds and public resources for personal benefit primarily.
Okay, so it wasn't.
They're a constitutionally authorized panel.
Okay, so it wasn't really a fair campaign. Well, it kind of was fair campaign practices, but it also was an ethics complaint.
Correct. It was an amalgamation of both, but because it was ultimately determined that the public funds were used for the personal benefit, being the campaign, the Independent Ethics Commission made a finding that that's what occurred.
Okay, so can I ask you one more question? So in this situation, would the same thing apply, the ethics, or do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes. That would be a matter of opinion. I would argue no, because the question is who benefited personally from the passage of a $40 million bond.
Okay.
And it would be very difficult to establish that there was anyone who stood to personally benefit from that public bond being passed, as opposed to the election of an individual person to an elected office, which was the scenario that you presented previously.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C1?
I move to approve 9C1.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Ward. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp.
Aye.
Member Pring.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you very much. For no public hearing items for tonight, moving on to 11A1. This is the CB 62. This is approval of the amended IGA with Arapahoe County for the Tri-Cities Homelessness Coordinator. This is still on first reading. We have Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd. Hello, Tim.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this, I think, is the third time that I'll be before you with this. I did do the presentation 2 meetings ago, so if it pleases you and Council, my plan would just be to go through it again once more, but maybe a little quickly, but then, of course, I'm happy to take whatever questions that you have. Great. So as a reminder, we've had an intergovernmental agreement, or an IGA, with Arapahoe County and the cities of Littleton and Sheridan since 2021. There's been a few different iterations of this plan, but it's really meant to be the backbone document that allows our formal collaboration. We have, as been mentioned, used ARPA funding for this program. So essentially what we're asking for tonight, and this piggybacks and dovetails, I guess I would say, with the discussion that you had with the other two city councils on November 21st. And so for us to be able to continue the work of the plan of action for an additional 2 years, we're seeking an additional appropriation of funding to provide to the county both for projects as well as for the extension of the Tri-Cities Coordinator position for an additional 2 years. I do also want to remind council that this wouldn't be new funding. It was already funding that council had dedicated towards ARPA for homelessness initiatives. So as a reminder, the action plan does include 4 themes: governance, single adult system, family system, and workforce development. The coordinator position really is critical. They don't provide direct services, I think, as you all know. They're really meant to be the glue that holds us all together. These are complex issues and problems and challenges, and so we really need someone who has the full-time job to do this work. I also want to point out that 3 years ago, really right after we started this work, we received the first ever Program Excellence Award for this project from the Colorado City and County Management Association. We've also had other cities in the state reach out to us about this model. As I mentioned, the coordinator's job is not to do direct service, and so as a result, I do want to point out some achievements to date. This slide really kind of speaks to kind of global achievements. So their job really is their action plan really as an employee is the action plan. And so 17 or 50% of 56%, excuse me, of the 30 action steps have been completed. A safe parking pilot, which is just really starting, is one of the, I think, and I won't call it a success because it's not completed, obviously, but it's already taken a lot of work to get there. They also serve as our point of contact with the Metro Denver Homelessness Initiative, otherwise known as MDHI. Why that's important is that's the organization that does the point in time count, or the PIT count, which is really just a snapshot count one night in January every year of people experiencing homelessness in the region. But thanks to the deep relationship that the Tri-Cities Coordinator built with MDHI, we're now our own subregion, which means for the first time this past year, we're finally able to get PIT count data specific to the Tri-Cities area. They also, and this is something that has been started, but we really want to ramp it up in future years, next year and the year after, is they're our point of contact with the different school districts who have McKinney-Vento coordinators, which is a formal federal act. And so they're really our point of contact on that. I also want to just point out a few key achievements in the action plan. Again, it doesn't mean that the coordinator did all of these on her own, of course, but her role really helped make these things happen. And so the governance structure is really important. It's 80% of the governance theme has been completed. It really, having been now doing this for about 4.5 years, this maybe isn't the easiest area to explain, but I think it's one of the areas that's really most critical to acknowledge that without a formal governance structure, We wouldn't have a navigation center about to open. We wouldn't have the Bridge House program about to open. We wouldn't have the initiatives that we have in this program. And so it's a multi-pronged approach to governance. It's one we want to look at for sustainability going into the future. It's the governance of how do we connect nonprofits in the work of the city? How do we partner with the county? How do we partner with the other cities? They also really have been working hard, as I mentioned, with Metro Denver Homelessness Initiative on collecting data through the HMIS system, which is the Homelessness Management Information System. They also helped us create the program to track implementation and achieve the outcomes in the plan. They also created the community education engagement strategy with our communication departments across the cities. I think we've had a lot of big achievements in the single adult system. As I mentioned, it's not open yet, but it will be opening this spring, having a navigation system, doing street outreach, and also the workforce development projects are a key piece of things that they've worked on, as well as working with the school district, which again is something we really want to do more of a focus on in the next 2 years. So why have a coordinator? And again, I think one of the things that's really important to point out is none of the 3 cities have a dedicated resource to homelessness. Yes, we have a homelessness case manager who works in the police department, who does quite a bit of work on that front. The city manager and I both spend quite a bit of time on this. But really, for us to be able to achieve the wins that we've had with the action plan, we've really needed someone who focused on this as a daytime job. As you can imagine, we're 3 different cities with 3 different structures in a lot of ways. And so this position really is meant to kind of look at holistically where all 3 cities are at and how they can work together. It's also being able to tap into the county resources, which we didn't have before. A lot of these are very complex projects, as I mentioned, so we need someone who can do troubleshooting work on them. They also serve as our liaison really with the nonprofit community, figuring out what their needs are. And as I mentioned, they're able to get data that we need really and almost at a moment's notice from a variety of different agencies across the state. As I've mentioned previously, the IGA really includes 2 components. One component is to continue the work of the coordinator for 2 more years. So it would be through the end of 2027 for 2, obviously with the Tabor lot would be subject to appropriation next year, obviously as well. And then the second piece is additional funding to complete projects. This is a model that we adopted a few years ago and it's not for all of our projects, but for some of the key projects that we have in the action plan, it would be giving funding through ARPA to the county to manage these projects for the city. So as was mentioned at the Tri-Cities Joint Council meeting, the city of Littleton is paying an additional $62,500. That's on top of their 50% that they're paying. As a reminder, we did change the funding methodology. So we are now paying, Englewood would pay 40% of the total. Sheridan is still agreeing to pay 10% of the total, and Littleton 50% of the total. So if this is approved by council, and of course subject to annual appropriations, the total for all of it for Englewood would be $170,000. These are the projects that are in the action plan that we're seeking a continuation of. This was in the draft plan that was talked about last week, as well as at the November 21st Joint Council meeting. These are all projects, again, that are already in the action plan. And so, again, this council has already approved as part of your ARPA list in 2021, $350,000 for the plan. And so all of these projects are included in that amount. It's not new funding that we're seeking. It's just the appropriation. This is a chart that shows, again, based on that methodology, what each city would pay. So Littleton would be paying the highest at $275,000 of the $487,000 total. Sheridan would be paying $42,050, and Englewood would be paying $170,000. The county does play a critical role in this. They provide general oversight and the employment of the coordinator. They do work with us very closely in all aspects of the hiring, the management, the maintenance of that position. We've developed a really strong relationship with them and working on it. And then the city is really our main function is, besides providing funding, is to provide a work plan. And really that work plan, again, is the action plan. So I think the city manager and I probably are in meetings with the coordinator, I would say between 3 and 5 times a month. There's a steering committee for Tri-Cities that she's a part of. We also have the Tri-Cities meetings. She has come and visited the facility. She's met with the library in different cases. She's met with our communications department. And so we're really able to engage her however we need to engage her. I also want to point out as part of that there's a lot of reporting requirements that are in the IGA that have been in the IGA. They are required to do an annual presentation to you, as well as to the other two city councils and the County Board of Commissioners. They report monthly on their updates to the Tri-Cities group. They also are required to maintain a dashboard that's publicly accessible on the Tri-Cities website. And then they also, as part of that, there will be, if it's approved by the three councils, in the new action plan, there are going to be performance metrics that this person will be required on a quarterly basis to report publicly. As I mentioned, the time period, if approved, would start next year and would run through the end of 2027, again, subject to annual appropriation, and it would be for 2 years. And that's the presentation.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Tim. Any questions for members of council? Actually, just have a quick question, just because the action steps, the projects, those, the single adult theme, the family system theme, Tim, those are the action steps that we're taking as a Tri-Cities, correct? So it's not one specific to, these aren't specific just to Englewood, correct?
No, they are not. That's a great point, Mayor. Yes, these are the, so in 2021, this body, as well as the other two city councils, adopted the plan of action, and these are in the plan that all three councils approved.
Okay, perfect. All right, any further questions? Go ahead, Member Russell.
So that $185,000, will it all be spent this year, 2025, I mean?
So I believe the goal is to appropriate it to the county, and then I'm not sure if our finance director wants to weigh in on if there's mechanics around how that would be done, but I think the expectation is that those projects would be completed in a 2-year period. I would need a finance director to kind of say how what the mechanics of that would look like. But I do believe, actually, Member Russell, I'd have to double check, but the action plan is meant to be 2 years, and so each of the projects is specific to 2025 or 2026. And I do think the vast majority of these are identified as 2025 projects.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I would add is that the amounts related to ARPA will need to be spent by the December 31st of 2026. So that's the only extra stipulation there.
Okay, and we have received all of the money from ARPA that we're going to get.
Correct.
And so it is in an account somewhere where we're appropriating it when we spend it, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So my question is, do we have all of this money that we're proposing already to be spent through 2026?
Yes, as you mentioned, we do have all of the ARPA funding.
Okay, so does the city put fees towards this that are not ARPA funds?
I don't believe, no, I think it's all, yeah, it's all the ARPA.
Yeah, it's 100% ARPA funds, and so when this body in 2021, I think it was, when we got the original tranche of ARPA funding, you basically weighed in through a few different study sessions, obviously not all of you were on council at the time, on developing a list, and one of the things on the list was funding for the Tri-Cities Plan of Action. So no, we have not appropriated any additional funding towards this initiative outside of ARPA.
Okay, so, and at the last Tri-Cities meeting, which was what, a month ago or something like that, there was continual reference to the funds are drying up. So the truth is, if we move forward with this, at the end of 2026, there may be no more funds and it will be over with.
That is a possibility, and that absolutely. So I think, as I've said before to this body, we were doing this at a time of unprecedented federal funding, so that was a benefit. The challenge, of course, though, is that it was one-time funding. So some of the new projects that we have on the action plan that you heard about on November 21st at that joint council meeting are related to developing a long-term sustainability model, both for the governance of Tri-Cities as well as for the financing of Tri-Cities.
Okay, This is my personal opinion, and I think this is where Tri-Cities has failed. The 3 cities that are working together on this are very small cities, and the majority of the problem is being dealt with in Denver and in Aurora. And they have the resources besides ARPA funding, and I feel like Tri-Cities has failed to cooperate with Denver. And Denver is sending their problem our way also. I think this plan really has been set up for failure, because when you look at how many thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars we already spent, and we're really not anywhere farther than we have been. I watched the Tri-Cities meeting that was on December 12th. Even the county commissioners are concerned. And Julie Hall, the Change the Trend chairman that is leaving, is concerned because this is unsustainable. So that is, I don't think I have any more questions, but thank you, I appreciate it.
Member Wright.
Thank you. Thank you. So one of my first questions is, over the years, so it sounds like we started this in 2021, how much money, ARPA funds or not, has Englewood put into this plan?
Yeah, so I'll try my best. So so 2018, I believe, is when Tri-Cities started. I started with the city in 2020. So I think there was some funding that was appropriated previously. For example, there was a study that was done with DU to basically understand trends that cost the city some money. There were some other smaller initiatives that the city could have put funding in. But since the plan was approved in and so first of all, the development of the plan with a consultant only cost around $13,000 total for all 3 cities. So it was done very economically. Since the plan has been approved, the total funding stream for the plan has always been $750,000. That's total. That includes the money that you have in front of you tonight, plus additional funding for the continuation of the Tri-Cities coordinator. Now, that does not include this council, and again, not every person here tonight was a member back then. But in addition to that, there were 2 other initiatives for workforce development. One was giving funding to Bridge House, one was to Cross Purpose. There are 2 initiatives that are, one's operating in Englewood, one will soon operate in Englewood. I hesitate to say the exact amount, but I think the ballpark is about $1.6 million roughly of ARPA funds towards homelessness. I think it was about 16 or 17% of the total ARPA funding that the city got. But that also does include what we're talking about tonight as well. So this is not new funding. So that 1.6 that I mentioned includes the funding that went to Bridge House and Cross Purpose. But for the action plan itself, it's just $350,000.
Okay. And then with Bridge House, wasn't it supposed to open over a year ago?
It has been delayed. We have been told that it will be opening early this spring. I think, and I can't speak for them directly, but I think some of the challenges were related to supply chain, also the need to raise additional funding. But I think they're in a good spot now. Yes, it was supposed to open this year. So it is a bit delayed.
Okay, so it's going to open over a year past the date of what it was originally scheduled. And I mean, that's not on you.
I don't remember the exact date. One thing, though, that I do want to point out is we started the pre-feasibility study, and that was really just at a high level, like, what is Bridge House? Would it work here in early 2021? So as far as a complex project like this goes, a 3.5-4 year period really is not that long comparatively to some other projects I've looked at. That being said, yes, we did hope it would have opened by now, but I don't believe it was a full year.
And I watched the Tri-Cities last meeting, and if I remember correctly, it's going to be 15 beds, and then there will be some emergency sheltering. I just don't recall how much emergency sheltering there will be, if I remember correctly.
So there's actually, and what's a little confusing is that there were two separate processes,
Right.
as you're aware. Bridge House happened to win both, which is why we're talking about them in two different contexts. So what you're mentioning about the 15 beds, that is for the navigation center. So that part of the program falls under our single adult system. Actually, in the contract and in the process, it was not expected that that would be a shelter of any kind. It's supposed to be beds that people are staying in while they're getting services. Now, the other side of the house, the workforce development side, that will have between 40 and 50 beds. If we apply the success rate from Bridge House at its two other locations in Aurora and Boulder to that 40 to 50 number, we're talking about 30 to 36 people a year being alleviated from homelessness based on the workforce development program. But those beds are in a totally separate area of the same building, totally separate program.
So the workforce, is that like the sober living and getting that, and the 15 beds would be emergency sheltering, and I had it backwards?
Oh, no, you have it exactly right, except for the 15 beds, I have to go double check, I have to go back and read the contract, but the 15 beds are for the navigation center. I don't believe the contract stipulates at all that it would be for the term sheltering. It would be people who would be staying there while they're getting navigation services. We did some research, I did some personally, and there is no specific model nationally of a navigation center as where someone stays a day, where they go for 5 hours. So we had very long negotiations with Bridge House about the number of beds, about the length of the stay. And so where we landed was that they would have beds for people who are going through the navigation process. So it's really not meant to be an emergency shelter.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Member Prang.
Thank you. I appreciate the update, and I appreciate the reminder that this is a very complex issue. I do think that it will be an ongoing issue and not one that can be solved in 3 years. That being said, knowing that, funding is potentially could dry up, or if we decided to not continue to identify a funding source to continue this into the future, in wanting to look at getting the most bang for our buck in funding this position, I'm just curious about whether this position spends time looking at kind of national successes and failures around homelessness. And I think of that specifically when I look at the list of projects for the coming years, the next 2 years, and there's that piece of the feasibility study around permanent supportive housing. And there are some cities nationally that have seen some significant successes in investing more strongly in permanent supportive housing, along with some increases in enforcement around homelessness. And so I'm just wondering, does this position have the ability to spend time looking at that kind of information and in bringing those conversations back to the joint Tri-Cities meetings? Again, apologies, I missed the last one, but I just think that that's something to keep an eye on, especially when you see a city that reduced their homeless population by like 60-some%. That to me is impressive, and I want to know more about it.
Absolutely, Member Prang, that's a phenomenal point. So I have to double check for sure what I'm about to say in the job description, but I believe that the job description does say, and I have to confirm that they will stay abreast of national and regional trends. That is definitely an expectation that, even if it isn't in the job description specifically, it is absolutely an expectation that we have. I will say, though, that I think in the past couple of years, because we had this action plan that was built partially by looking at trends, that was how we found out about organizations like Bridge House, for example, that there hasn't maybe been as much of that as there could be. I'll just be very honest about that, because I think there's just been a focus on getting the work done that was based on national trends and standards and the DU research. But I think as we're kind of now at a 3-year mark and we're looking to the future, I think it's absolutely a great reminder to me, so thank you for sharing it. Yes, we do need to keep doing that work. I think also because the position is part of a county infrastructure, there are other people working in the same unit and department that she works in that also are working on this. So Centennial, for example, I believe has a somewhat similar relationship with the county on this. The county has a few positions dedicated to homelessness, and so it's absolutely something I'll double check with them on. But yes, the intent is that they would be spending some of their time doing that research and keeping up to date on those trends.
So Tim, just a question, I'm coming back to, you outlined what we have been spending our ARPA dollars on in terms of just providing for Bridge House and some of the other infrastructure projects that we want to get in place. But outside of the co-responder program, is there anything else coming out of the general fund that we set aside for homeless services?
Not that I can think of. I mean, there's some very minimal, like the library, for example, was doing a Resource Connect program, which I think was all basically in-kind time of librarians, which has been paused, and I think we may look at a new model for that in the future. And then we do, of course, every year the Homelessness Connect event, which we do actually have city employees who volunteer, and it does take some, I guess I would say, in-kind costs, but none that I can think of. I think we've been pretty cost-effective with this.
Yeah, because I know that some of the concerns that were brought up in terms of just like ongoing funding were mostly at the county level, federal, just the uncertainty at the federal level, whether or not those funds are going to be available coming, or that they may dry out, with the new administration potentially, right? So that was more of the concern, but from a city perspective, we've really, outside of just ARPA, have never been setting aside additional dollars to homeless services outside of that co-responder.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think again, before I arrived, there were some other small one-time projects.
There was a pestle and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's all I'm aware of.
Right, okay. Thank you, Tim.
Mayor, if I could, we've also leveraged a lot of dollars with Swedish, for instance, contributed to the DU study on homelessness. The South Metro Community Foundation, which is a newish foundation in Littleton, based out of Littleton, but serving Tri-Cities, has raised over $100,000 that was towards the Navigation Center, and they've gotten grants from other, foundations themselves. We also would have never gotten the $2 million in the federal earmark from Congressman Crow. All of that was because we had Tri-Cities and we had 3 cities working together. So we had $2 million coming into the community specifically to rehab a vacant, dilapidated industrial building that, was not being used. That's now going to be housing 75 people that are trained, and coming out of homelessness because of that. So a lot of leveraging of federal, state, local, Rotary Club, Lions Club. Lots of people have been contributing to this effort.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. No, I guess my point is that a lot of the services that are being provided for homeless, for the unhoused, are really coming from our partner network, right? It's our partner network, it's our county, it's the federal. As a city, we haven't done as much. I know that we have Tri-Cities, but I just want to be clear that in terms of what we're setting aside from the general fund is really minimal at this point. And it's something that maybe this council wants to consider in the future, but at this point, it's not really coming out of the general fund dollars.
Absolutely, Mayor. And I would also add to that obviously to continue this programming into the future, some funding would be needed.
Right.
But we've tried to do our best with using one-time funds for one-time costs.
Right.
So we've really tried to use the funds that we've gotten through ARPA to incubate initiatives that obviously will cost something to maintain, but that will be far less than the actual development of the program.
Right. And part of the reason why we didn't set aside funds from the city perspective is because our timing was right in terms of ARPA. So obviously we wanted to get the program off the ground, utilize those dollars, and then see where we're at in terms of just building off of that. But no, I appreciate the response, Tim and Sean, on that. Member Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is on the off chance that this isn't approved tonight, have there been discussions on how this money could be put to use right now to help the homeless? There's been a lot of money that's been, put to the Tri-Cities. The Tri-Cities work great together. I agree with Member Russell that we have 3 cities that equal less than 100,000 people. And then you get Denver and Aurora, who are 3, 4, 5 times bigger than us. So it's much more difficult. We don't have the land space, we don't have the money, we don't have the resources. The one thing that our cities do have is we are rich in our nonprofits that want to help people. And I think that's one of the huge ways that we can address these issues. We have big hearts in these cities, especially Englewood. I've heard it many, many times. In working with the Tri-Cities Subcommittee and those nonprofits and being on some of the Change the Trend calls. I believe there's great resources there that we have not used or tapped into, that it's not going to cost government money. I mean, when I listened to the December 12th call, the mayor of Sheridan, I think, said it perfectly. People don't want government to fix all of this. There's other ways around it. And I'm like, that's kind of profound. So I guess my question is, have we discussed other ways that this money can be used, come up with Plan B if we need to come up with a Plan B?
Yeah, thank you, Member Wright. So to one of the points you made, you're exactly right. We are beyond lucky to have the nonprofit coordination and community that we have. In my previous city, as a city employee, I had to basically help stand up a nonprofit equivalent to Change the Trend. So when I came here, that was one of the first things I saw as a huge asset. And we're very, very fortunate to have, I think, 35 plus nonprofits, most of which are actually located in Englewood, but all of which are located in the Tri-Cities. To answer your direct question, we have not contemplated what the alternative would be. Of course, if you don't approve it tonight, the first step would be to let the other two cities know. I don't know for sure if it's been approved by the other two cities. They only require one reading of IGAs, but I do believe that it's either has been approved or is about to be approved. So we'd have to have that phone call tomorrow morning for sure, and we would absolutely talk about what a Plan B would be. But the reason that we're here tonight with this specific request is that it's based on the data and the science that established the original action plan. So the original action plan was developed with, I think, over 50 one-on-one interviews with local elected officials, state elected officials, nonprofits, individuals who had experienced homelessness. And so we really want to kind of continue to work the plan. You're exactly right, though, that this plan does not include direct funding for direct services that are provided by nonprofits. However, I would make the point that a lot of these initiatives, some of them are studies, and like, for example, permanent supportive housing, that will take a long time for us to, not a long time, but a few years for us to fully develop. But some of them, things like outreach to landlords, would hopefully be a direct benefit to people experiencing homelessness in terms of helping people either gain access to rental units or helping them stay in them. The safe parking pilot program, if that were to launch, that would obviously be a service that would be provided directly with these funds to people experiencing homelessness. So while and then the family system, $50,000, developing a lead service provider would basically be creating a navigation network for children and families experiencing homelessness. So no, it would not be like direct grants to nonprofits, but we do believe, of course, that based on the data we collected when we developed the action plan, that these programs and initiatives would directly impact in a positive way people experiencing homelessness.
Okay, I could appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Member Russell?
I don't necessarily, well, and maybe this is a question for him. I think that Englewood has been very generous in a way that we are providing money and resources is through your staff time and through the city manager's staff time. And if you added up how much time you all were spending on this, I think it could be fairly substantial. And which is also a cost to the city in the fact that those resources could be used only to look at at city things. Here herein lies my concern. Back in 2018, I went to, it was the 50th anniversary for the Action Center in Lakewood. And it started out in 1968 as 2 Quonset huts. That's all they had. They have grown into a tremendously huge organization and they are all a 501c3. I actually happened to be sitting at a table where educators were sitting and a couple county commissioners, Jefferson County commissioners. This was a fundraiser, even though it was their 50th anniversary. I was so impressed in the effectiveness. I pulled out my personal checkbook and wrote them a check. I asked the county commissioners, I said, how much are you giving? And he said, we're not giving as much as I would like to give because this organization is a resource to this county. The county is where the money really goes to. Counties have a lot more money than cities do. But I think probably at that one fundraiser, it was in a huge room. I bet you they raised over $350,000 in one fundraiser. That is not what local governments do. And I think that it is a very difficult thing for us to do. It seems like in the last 5 years, if you go back to 2018, we've just been building an administrative framework that probably will never take off because it's not really something that cities were designed to do. And so I am concerned about continuing to provide staff time. And I would like to know if there is some way that we could spend this money without continuing to hire, to hire employees that are like the Tri-Cities coordinator, for instance. That's a pretty hefty salary. Is there a way that we could spend this money directly to help homelessness? So anyway, those are my thoughts right now. I'm not upset that we're not doing anything, but I don't know. How long do we go on? Do we just go ahead and spend the next 2 years wasting that money when there might be a way to use it? So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. City Manager Lewis, did you want to
Thank you,
speak
Mayor.
to
I
that, or
know,
Tim?
Deputy City Manager Dodd would like to speak on that also. I think you're exactly right, Member Russell, in terms of, government and, being able to provide a structure. Whether or not that will be able to be sustained, I think really depends on if we can get another 2-3 years out of the coordinator using the ARPA dollars that were allocated unanimously by council for this purpose. Also, we did a public, feedback and public engagement process around when we got those dollars about how we should spend that. And even in our most recent community survey, the community is saying, you need to do more on homelessness. And so, we're responding to that and haven't really heard ideas about other ways to spend that as we've been working through this and trying to meet the deadline of the end of this year to get it allocated, which is the federal requirement to spend. To your point about staffing, you're exactly right. We have spent more time. You heard Littleton thank Englewood for spending probably the lion's share of time on this, and much of that is Deputy City Manager Dodd. But without this position, that is going to skyrocket. If we don't have this position, Tim and I are going to be having to spend hours and hours of more time on this every month. And so it's such a difficult question to answer, and I really appreciate the thoughts and comments. Using this money judiciously, I think, is what we all want, and something that can actually get people access to housing. But Tim?
Yeah, and Member Russell, I think you make an excellent point that I 100% agree with. I'm going to give 2 quick examples, but also kind of talk about what the future could hold. So in terms of the funding that in both Cross Purpose and Bridge House, we're incredibly grateful to you for providing them with seed money. But both organizations, what we gave them was really to help kind of kickstart or help kind of incubate. But they're both incredibly adept at doing their own fundraising. And so the expectation with Bridge House and with both those organizations is that hopefully they're not going to be coming back and asking us for any additional funding, that they're going to be doing that all through philanthropic work. The other thing I wanted to point out about the long-term kind of future around this is in the plan of action that we're proposing, the extended version, there's two projects under the governance section that deal with this. One is developing a financial model that would be sustainable. But the other is looking at a hosted fund that I think I've explained to council. But essentially, it would be maybe working with a foundation that would create a fund that people could donate to, that individuals could donate to, that nonprofits could donate to, that businesses could donate to, that groups could donate to. So we realize that the future is not the city is spending considerable money. Not to say that the cities wouldn't be asked in the future, but we really want to do more philanthropic work. We know that city funding is not the answer for 100% of this work. We really were in a unique place to kickstart it, and that's really what it was about. We know that we won't be able to financially sustain it, and that's really why the philanthropic part is so important.
All right, any further questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11A1?
Move to approve CB 62.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Nunnenkamp. Any further comments? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just wanted to look back on the past and how we've gotten to this place, because we were really in, I think, an incredibly fortunate position when ARPA money, or the ARPA funding came down. Tri-Cities existed before COVID hit, and it was started by our former mayor, Linda Olson. Change of trend already existed, and I think we had already done the DU study at that point. I think that was before COVID as well. And so we had this whole infrastructure already kind of in place to build out a plan and start funding some really important initiatives that we all agreed were kind of priorities. The biggest priority was job training programs that actually help people get off the streets or prevent homelessness. And that's where the largest bulk of the money from the ARPA funding went, is towards Cross Purpose and Bridge House, which will launch soon. And these are programs that don't require government money to sustain. And so we took that one-time money and leveraged it into something that will have 50 beds that could be graduating people year after year after year without another dime of the city government money going into it. That's really remarkable that we had that. Not only did the money come, but we also already had a system in place to utilize that money, and we're able to leverage it to get those programs off the ground, and then hire a coordinator to make sure those projects got executed that were in that plan. So I'm just really grateful that we've gotten here, that so many years of progress towards this plan, and to be able to finally execute this IGA to allocate the last of the money from ARPA, I think is tremendously important.
Member Nunnenkamp.
Yes, I'm going to be supporting this tonight, and I appreciate the really thoughtful conversation that we've had here. And as I even mentioned earlier, our job is to steward the resources that we have available to us wisely. And I do think the challenge is, what is the city's role in addressing homelessness? Unfortunately, no other municipality has solved it, and so we are trying to figure it out just as much as everyone else is. But we're not a service provider. We have our wonderful nonprofit partners, as Member Wright pointed out. And so I think our role, and the reason I'm supporting this, is to help think about what's the long-term infrastructure that we can build with partners at a regional level that can have long-term effects versus meeting one-time immediate needs. Now, I really empathize with Member Wright's question around, could we be serving people immediately now? Of course we could, but I really think that building something that can be a tool and a resource that can have multiplication effects, and we can really leverage and be a force multiplier in the work, is a really powerful opportunity. I often say that the most frustrating part of my job on city council is everything takes so long, and this is no exception. We're not seeing the immediate payoffs we want, but this stuff we're building it, and building things takes time. And I'm not ready to pull back on this project yet. Remember, Praying, you brought up permanent supportive housing, which in the meeting, when we had our joint meeting, that was something that I also brought up, is how do we have more of a solution, and how do we prevent more homelessness by having more housing options, by having more collaboration on these issues. And I also asked for more of that in the plan that we have seen now, and so I'm excited to see that move forward. I do think we have to start moving that direction, but we have an opportunity tonight to fund a project that our nonprofit partners can't necessarily do without us. We have the opportunity to play our part in this ecosystem. Nothing is perfect, but when we look even at some of the other cities that were mentioned tonight, the mayor of Denver gets a lot of flack for, yes, he's housed a lot of people, but there are one-time housing opportunities that are not building in long-term sustainability, and the infrastructure that we are trying to fund tonight has the ability to do that. There are different approaches. I'm not knocking what he's done. I think it's part of the process, but I'm proud of the work we've done so far. I think it would be a shame to see us abandon it. And again, we don't have to make a general fund decision tonight. We can still use this funding and continue to track our progress. So I urge a yes vote.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Member Russell.
I would respectfully disagree. We have created a problem from the very beginning. I'll never forget the very first Change the Trend meeting, and I'm not sure that any of you were here back then. I think Member Anderson may have been on the Change the Trend board. There were 8 young pastors, including Mayor Pro Tem and Nathan Hoag and Mike Sangren, the police department. They were all partnering together. And that very first meeting, the one thing that was said there that troubled me, and my gut feeling turned out to be true in the end. And it was reiterated over and over and over again. It is not a crime to be homeless. But how that played out in reality was we were not prosecuting for the homeless for crimes they committed. So we have ultimately, meaning the city, in partnering with these 8 churches, created this problem. It is an incestuous relationship in which we provided a job for a pastor maybe making $45,000 to go to 6 figures, including benefits. And we are continuing to waste, I don't care if it's not Englewood dollars, it is taxpayer funds. And I am tired of us pouring taxpayer money down a hole that will never change. And so the bottom line is I will not be supporting this tonight.
Thank you, Member Russell. I will be in support of this tonight. You know, we have come a long way from where we started with Tri-Cities, and I'm happy with the progress that we've made. It's not something that I want to stop at today. Homelessness is an issue here in the city of Englewood, and as long as it's an issue, I want to see us try to provide a solution to the issue. I know that we're not going to be able to solve it, but we need to continue to move in that direction. You know, I know that Denver and Aurora are doing different things there, but I don't think that they're going to be helping us with our homeless issue. So the fact that Littleton and Sheridan and Englewood have gotten together to kind of look for a solution as a regional body, I'm in support of. And I don't think that government's going to be a solution to this, but where we can be a solution, we kind of already discussed separately in terms of just loosening our zoning regulations, you know, setting aside affordable housing as part of any new development. Those type of things I want to see as well. But in terms of what we're doing with Tri-Cities, I'm very supportive of all the work that's happened with the Tri-Cities group, as well as with Change the Trend and our partner networks. They have done a lot for us, and so I will be in complete support of this, and I'm looking forward to the continued dialogue in terms of what else we can be doing, because I know it's not enough, so thank you so much. All right, with nothing else, Member Prang, did you want to?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to add a last thought. Regardless of history and how this came about, I agree this is an issue for our city. And our constituents in a recent survey spoke very loudly and clearly that this is an issue for our city. And so it's not maybe a perfect solution, but I do feel a level of responsibility to be addressing it, and to be responsive to not only what I saw in the survey results and homelessness being a major concern for our constituents, but also what I hear very regularly from businesses in the challenges that they're facing around homelessness. And I think that even outside of Tri-Cities and this being a part of the solution, there's further conversations that we need to have. We need to have more conversations amongst city council around that enforcement piece and what that looks like. We need to have further conversations about, okay, now we have some short-term solutions in place and ready to open their doors. So what are we gonna do about that next piece of more permanent supportive housing? Because giving someone a bed overnight is not gonna solve their situation. So as much as we may not love to have to play a role as a local government, when our citizens are telling us to do something about it, I feel like I have to be responsive to that. And so therefore I'll be in support tonight.
All right, with no further comments, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Aye. Member Prang.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Nay.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Nay.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays.
Tim, thank you so much for all your work on this. I know that we have a second reading on this, but thank you again for the presentation tonight. Moving on to general discussion, Mayor's choice. A couple of items I wanted to bring to council's attention in terms of discussion on how to move forward. First one was ranked choice voting. I know that we have asked the city clerk to put together a presentation on ranked choice voting sometime in Q1 of next year. I'm bringing this back up for discussion just because at the state level, ranked choice voting did not pass. And so wanted to see if there was any change from this body's perspective in terms of still having the discussion in Q1, or if you see this as a moot point. But I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention and just see where you're at. And in terms of my perspective, I would still like to have the discussion with ranked choice voting. City clerk, I think you're still expecting to put something together sometime February or March, I believe. But I still want to move forward with the discussion, and at that point, we could decide, how to move forward with that. But that's where I sit today. Member Noonan and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Member Wright was before me.
No, go ahead.
We'll go down the row.
I'm open to the conversation. My bigger concern is that if we go to a direct mayor vote, which is what the citizens voted on, there's the possibility, and I would say the likelihood, that it will be a very crowded field, which means that we would end up electing a mayor with minority support of the city. If we've got, 6 people in the field, you could end up with someone who's winning with 20 or 30%. And I think that's concerning for good governance. So there are many ways we can resolve that. We can institute a primary, we can institute a runoff system, or we can institute an instant runoff, which is also known as ranked choice voting. I think that's an important conversation for us to have and think about what's the right mechanism for our city. Ranked choice voting is just it's one lever we can pull, it's one policy we can implement, but it's all about getting to a majority outcome, and I think that's what's important to good governance. So that's the city session I would support.
Thank you, Member Noonan. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'm still supportive of having the conversation, though I do think, if we could have a discussion around the possibility of doing a runoff. I mean, maybe if ranked choice voting is less favorable than a runoff approach, I'd be happy to have a discussion about that, and would also be curious if that's allowed under our charter, would require a citizen vote as well. So I'd be happy to add that to the conversation there as an alternative.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. I think number one, maybe we need to see how busy the field's gonna get. But the other thing I want to point out, I believe it was Prop 131, the state voted, and 53% of the state voted no. They did not want ranked choice voting. And I'm like, okay, I tried to find how the city felt about it, and the cast vote records are not out yet. So I looked at the county, and I talked to a friend of mine who is an election specialist that pulls records and stuff all the time. And the county voted pretty much in lockstep with the state, 52.17 against, and the state was 53.3. And he said that the city of Englewood is usually right in line with the county. So if we have the state against ranked choice voting, and then you have the county that's against ranked choice voting, he said 99% sure that the city is against ranked choice voting also. My issue was we're spending a lot of city time, resources, to put something together that the voters have voted on. If this is something that we're gonna move forward with, I believe it was Sarah that mentioned at one point during a study session that someone from Boulder was gonna come and speak to us. We need someone on the opposite side that has had ranked choice voting in their city and something had gone wrong and the voters decided we don't want it. So we have that opposite view. So we see both sides of it. So we see what has gone good. Boulder, may love it because they've had it, but we need to see another city that had it and chose to get rid of it. So I think the voters have spoken.
Thank you, Member Wright. Anyone else? Member Ward?
I'm not compelled by the argument we heard about the statewide vote just now. It's ironic to me that the people who would encourage us to strictly enforce home rule would reference a statewide vote as a reason not to have a discussion about ranked choice voting. So I want to have the discussion about ranked choice voting. I agree with Councilwoman Newnan-Camp that there are multiple possible methods to solve the issue of whether someone gets elected with 30% of the vote to the mayor's seat or with a plurality of votes or the majority of the vote. And I think it's a discussion that's worthy of having in order to maintain the healthiest city possible. So I would like to have a discussion about that.
Sounds good. Member Ward, thank you so much. So we'll go ahead and get that on the calendar for sometime.
Mayor, can I make
Member
a
Wright?
clarification? I tried to get Englewood's voting records, but they weren't available. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that.
I just Member Wright, I just went off what you said.
Well,
You
you
used
said
county data and state data as a way of justifying not doing
because
this.
the
Member Wright.
cities were not available.
Member Wright, we have a majority of council that wants to have that discussion. So we'll get it on the calendar for sometime in Q1 of next year. The second item is that 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion regarding additional information requested for discussion on the judge's salary. There was some input from members of council. I know we didn't have a full body that night, but if there any additional information that's requested for this judge's salary, I know that we had this discussion a year ago this time a year ago, and so I just want to make sure that when we have this discussion, whatever is being asked is going to be part of that, part of the packet during that evening. So anything else that any members of council want to add for that discussion? Go ahead, Member Wright.
Okay, so are we talking about early next year? Because there was a list of information we wanted to bring it back for full council, to bring him up to salary to the other full-time judges, or from a year from now? Because there was a discussion to bring him up to salary.
So we're going to have a discussion on the judge's salary early 2025, so in a month or two.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Member Prang.
I guess I would just appreciate knowing, having more information from the members of council that were strongly advocating for a significant increase on the salary, what up to salary looks like. And I'm asking for that because I struggle a little bit with whether we like or dislike a particular position should not be coming into play. Whether someone has been here for tons of years or only, 3 to 5 years should not be a sole determining factor. If I'm, partially responsible in looking at our budget and having responsibility to how we pay people and compensate people, and we're wanting to do, from my perspective, what I'm hearing more of like a merit-based increase to get someone up to salary, that should be based on something. If we're gonna do a significant increase that's above and beyond what anyone else in the city got this last year, I want to be able to defend that if I'm going to vote in favor of it. And so I don't have any other definition of information that I want, but I would want more clarity from fellow members of council who are advocating for that on, a justification for that ask.
I think it was Member Ward first, yeah. Go ahead, Member Ward.
I concur with Member Prang, but one thing that I would like is, on the consent agenda tonight, we voted to reappoint 2 associate judges. And one of the statistics that would be helpful for me is how many days is the city paying to have an associate judge presiding over the court?
The presiding judge. You said the
Correct.
presiding
We
judge,
use
correct? Okay.
associate judges
Yeah.
because we need someone to be on the bench when the judge is not there. I would like to know how many days we are doing that in a year, given the number of associate judges that we have, that we've approved.
All right. Thank you, Member Ward. Member Russell?
Thank you. I would like to say it's not because the judge takes vacation all the time. The associate judges are necessary because there may be a conflict of interest in the judge hearing certain cases, and maybe there's more because they only get paid, the associate judges only get paid when they're here. That's just my opinion with that. But really what I wanted to talk about is the process, and in response to Member Prang's question. Really, ever since I've been on council, the process pretty much is the same. Meaning that even when Vince Atencio was the judge, and originally they did the appointments in executive session, which is illegal. The Vince Atencio would send the list of all the judges and their current salaries, and then the council would make the decision based on that. Judge Atencio did not have to defend his position at all. He was an elected official. The only thing in the process that changed after it became public, and this council has codified that process in our policy manual, is that the judge will present what the presiding salaries are of other judges in the metro area. He left out Denver and Aurora, probably because they're larger cities and they're not comparable. The council is not responsible to keep track of what the judge does or what his job is. That is the citizen's job to decide, do we want this person to be our judge? Our job in the policy states council will decide the salary based on those comparables that are put forward. What I brought up was that, and I'm not advocating that the judge needs to have comp and class done. He does not. That is for the employees. He's an elected official. But when you look at the comparables that we got, he is the lowest paid judge by over $22,000. And if all of those judges get raises, then, so the bottom line is those figures, what those judges are making, it tells this council what the going rate to hire a judge in the metro area is. And that's what we need to base our decision on. According to the policy, I don't think we need to change the policy. I think the policy is accurate. But I think it is arrogant for us to believe that we should evaluate what he's doing. So, and actually, Member Noonan Camp, I appreciated your response to public comment, because that's basically what you said about how we determine salaries for our employees, not just the judge. So it's similar, but I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
And Member Wright.
Thank you. Member Russell pretty much said what I was going to say, but to add to that, the list that was provided to us at that council meeting was the list of the remaining full-time judges. So that was all that could be provided and their salary. I don't know what more. It is not our job to evaluate the judge and how many cases he has and what he does. Just like our evaluation. What is our evaluation? Our voters. When we're up for election again, it's the voters that will elect us, period. Just the same with the judge. His evaluation is the voters. And that's how we have to look at it, is you like them or not, that's what it is, period. If we want to be evaluated, we don't get city employees, we don't get businesses, we don't get people within our district or at large come and sit down and tell us what we're doing good or what we're doing bad. That's not how it works. Just like we can't sit the judge down and say what we like or don't like about him. Too many cases, not enough cases, too big fines, too low of fines, whatever.
Member Wright,
That's
there's
how it
nothing
is.
you will need,
So,
no additional information you need for that discussion then?
no, he provided everything that's required.
Thank you, Member Wright. Anything else, Mayor Pro Tem?
I think this was probably already captured, but I was just wanting to know the comparable size cities that don't particularly have a full-time judge and how much they're paying for their judging and in relation to total caseloads, and then total caseloads for all those cities with the full-time judges as well.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, so we'll get that scheduled for early 2025. Last thing for me for tonight, just want to make everyone aware, the middle school band and the high school bands are going to be performing tomorrow night. It's being called Jingle at Englewood. It's going to be at Fisher Auditorium. My son will be playing with the middle school kids, so I will be there. Middle school goes on at 6 o'clock until about 6:45 or so, and then there's going to be a bake sale in between that and the high school band starting up at 8 p.m. So this is tomorrow night, Tuesday, and it's going to be at the Fisher Auditorium, which is connected to the high school and the middle school right off of Logan. So hope to see you all there. And lastly, just happy holidays. This is our last meeting of the evening, so Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and we will be back in early 2025. Anyone else for council member's choice? Go ahead, Member Wright.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up how to address council communication with each other as city manager. I was very sick last week. I did not know that the mayor was gone. There was a snafu in communication. Apparently, there were other council members out. And I didn't see the meeting until the following day. So I think this council needs to come up with a policy or communication. One, if we're going to be on vacation, personal day, if we're able to communicate that we're sick, so that we know what's going on. So number one, if we're able to make it here so that there's not an issue with not making quorum, or that we just know what's going on with each other. Had I known that you were going to be gone, I would have been able to communicate it to others as background, backup, that type of thing. Because I didn't know the week before. Remember, Praying texted me saying that, some stuff was going on with her and what's going on, and that's why I was here with barely any kind of a voice, because I wanted to make sure we met quorum. So I think that as a council, we need to I don't know, communicate with each other better as to what's going on, to not leave it on our city manager to make sure that things don't, slip through the cracks, because we as a body need to work, together and communicate with each other so that if someone's sick in bed, it doesn't happen again. So I think we need to come up with something.
Thank you, Member Wright. Sean, were you the point person in terms of just communication in terms of, because I know that once you get 3 or more council members, it's a little tough. And so, yeah, I guess apologies in terms of not letting all the council know I was going to be out last week, but.
Well, it was definitely 100% on me. I mean, you happen to be out of town, but that's why there's a backup. And so I again apologize for that oversight. The one thing I do think would be interesting the next time we revise council policy handbook is to add the city clerk to that list for both things that are pulled off of the agenda or consent agenda, and if you're going to be absent, because then you have like 3 different people who are kind of watching that. And frankly, the clerk's office is really watching for those things being pulled. And, I'm in meetings throughout the afternoon of Monday, and I may not get it until right before the meeting and don't have an opportunity to pass it on to staff. So it's not in the policy, but that would be a good backup. Remember, right, you're bringing up an excellent point, and I would suggest that we just add the city clerk to that notification of absences and pulling things off consent.
Yeah, I think that would make sense in terms of just providing visibility to anybody that may be out and, possibly jeopardizing quorum, so.
Yeah, let each other know.
Okay. All right, I appreciate you bringing that up. Member Nuenkamp and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure, I'll just give a brief readout. The Englewood Christmas Store happened on Saturday at Bishop Elementary School. This is a collaboration between several different community groups, the Englewood School District, lots of our local businesses participate. Restaurants like Grow and Gather and Chick-fil-A donate food. The Englewood Grand was a gift collection site. And then there were both school district employees, school board members, and city staff all volunteering on the day. We served hundreds of Englewood families who participate in the free and reduced lunch program in Englewood schools were able to come and experience a dignified shopping experience for their families, so they'll have a very happy holiday. So very grateful to the staff who were able to participate and made it possible. It's a wonderful community event.
Thank you very much, Member Nuenkamp. Anyone else from council? All right, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. First of all, thank you to everyone who participated in the holiday events this weekend. We had Holiday Express. We had the Christmas tree lighting and the event that went with that. And thank you to our staff who works really hard putting those events together, and for council members and members of the public who participated. Secondly, just wanted to check in with council. Historically, we've had a meeting with our federal, state, and county-wide officials, elected officials, and that is really just to check in, explain our priorities, if we have legislative priorities for our federal or state representatives, as well as how we can work together with the county. I wanted to just check in with council. Those are usually in the daytime. Attendance has been a little bit sparse. We're not always unified on a position that maybe staff says, yeah, we want to, this is what staff thinks we should, be legislating or asking our legislators for. So I just wanted to check in and see if those meetings are useful, if we could maybe add a process where we have a discussion about, policy questions so that we do at least have a majority before we go into those meetings. We've not done that in the past, but I think maybe that would be helpful. But just in general, is this something we want to continue doing with any of those 3 parties?
Go ahead, Member Nuenkamp.
I think we should keep doing it. I wonder, as a process improvement, is this something that we could do after our retreat? That maybe we could talk about it on our retreat? What are the priorities that we would like to see action on, maybe at the state or the federal level, where we can unify and then have the meetings? Is that something possible?
Yeah, and Member Nuenkamp, and I can dig up a couple years ago, I think before you were on council, I did a study session on a few different models that cities employ to advocate for positions with their state legislatures. And one of them was, as part of the retreat, basically, obviously not all pieces of legislation are known then, but basically doing kind of a broad stroke of, we want to focus on affordable housing or whatever the topic is. That's very common. So if that's something council wanted to do, I could find a few models for that, and we could do it as either part of the retreat or maybe a follow-up discussion.
Yeah, and I'm curious to hear what my colleagues think, but I think having a conversation in advance makes sense so that we're aligned and picking a couple of priorities that we say, hey, this is really important in Englewood. One that comes to mind for me is construction defects at the state level would be a great one.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of continuing the conversations at all levels, federal, state, county, so. Member Ward.
I think those conversations are beneficial as well. Just, I've found in the past, if I need to go to somebody, it's nice to have them know my face and recognize me ahead of time. So in the event that we do need something from our state legislative caucus in particular, taking the time to do that meeting once a year, I think is helpful for when that time to ask for something comes.
All right, Member Pring.
Yeah, I'd be in support of continuing those meetings as well. I think it's our responsibility as elected officials to maintain those relationships. And I do love the idea of a conversation ahead of time so that we do have agreement on what we want to take forward. And Tim, I'd love to hear strategies of what other cities have done around that.
It's hard to align 7 or more schedules, so I think we're just gonna have to try with what we can, but yeah, let's try to get it on the schedule
And I think probably with that kind of alignment discussion, we'd be looking at February. We usually do this in January, but I think we need to push that back to latter part of February, spring. The last thing, I'm gonna ask the Deputy City Clerk, Jackie McKinnon, to come up and just kind of go over with you deadlines, scheduling for our boards and commission applications.
Good evening, one more time. All right, so we received 40 applications for board and commissions. That's 40 applications. We closed the applications on December 9th at 5 o'clock. I actually probably didn't shut them down till 7. But with the 40 applications, we are gonna have to do 2 nights of interviews. And I wanna get consensus. I believe back in June, you guys started the meeting at 5. So if we could start at 5, I'm looking at doing 20 interviews the first night and 20 the second. So we would start at 5 the first night and go to 8:30. And then the second night would also be starting at 5 and go to 8:30. And then you'd have a discussion for 20 minutes or so after that.
What are those dates? Is it January 10th and 11th?
January 13th and 14th.
13th and 14th.
It's in lieu of a study session for January.
All right. I can make it work. I got a thumbs up over here. It's gonna be hard doing 2 nights at 5 p.m., but I think it looks like, see you head nodding yes. Member Wright, did you have your light on?
Oh, no, we're
We're
good.
good to go?
Okay, yeah, I think that will work then.
Okay, that'll help. I can send
40
the invites out
applicants, is that the
tomorrow.
most we've had before? This might be?
I think it's pretty close. We had 40 or 42 before, so this is one of the second highest ones.
Okay,
So it's pretty cool. I think we had almost every board except code enforcement had an application.
okay.
So-
Sounds good. Go ahead, Member Wright.
We've received a couple emails where people are saying we're trying to apply. We weren't able to get in and it's way past the deadline. Here's our resume. Have we answered them or can I forward it to you where you can
We
respond to
answered
them?
one of them. I thought I answered the second one. The deadline was 5 o'clock on that Monday, and I did receive applications right up to that time. So once it shuts down, they cannot submit a new
And
application.
that's the email we received. I'm trying to apply.
So I'll reach
I
back
can't
out to
get in.
her, but I think we had one more like a week ago, but he was trying to apply on Wednesday, the 11th, but we'd already shut it down. And hers was after the 9th at 5 o'clock. She tried to
yeah,
apply.
it was
But I'll
way
reach
past.
out to her.
Okay.
And we're going to open back up in February. It's going to be a quick turn for the summer, so they're more than welcome to apply for the next round.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I actually think I have a conflict on the 14th, looking at my personal calendar. So
Okay.
I maybe continue without me. I can weigh in on watch the recording and weigh in
Okay.
on appointments.
And it will be recorded. We'll post it on the 15th. We're going to record it through Teams, so you can go back and watch the interviews for that second night.
Sounds good.
And you won't make a decision till, I think it's this next meeting. What is that?
It's the meeting afterwards.
Yeah, you'll do the
Tuesday,
resolution then.
So it'll be Tuesday because it's after MLK Day.
Yep.
But we normally make a recommendation the night of, so that's the only issue. But yeah,
Okay.
we can work around it,
Okay.
obviously. Okay, perfect. Member Russell, I see you're ready to say something. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Russell. Anything else, City Manager?
I'll echo those sentiments from staff, and also just that you really should be proud to see this many applications. I mean, this is incredible. 2019, 2020, 2021, we could not get people to apply for these boards and commissions. So just the number of people who are really wanting to get involved with the city, get involved with the good work is really a credit to council, in my opinion, and so, thank you.
Thank you
all
so
I have.
much. And yeah, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you guys in 2025. Be safe, everyone. Good evening.